Last week we walked through the resurrection appearances of Jesus using the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. This week we'll walk through the appearances recorded in the Gospel of John. That seems like a strange move though, doesn't it? Spending a week on the appearances of Jesus in 3 Gospels, then a week in only 1 Gospel? Well, if you open your Bible to the resurrection appearances in the 4 Gospels, you'll see that John includes longer accounts than the others. Partly this is just John being John. John's Gospel, after all, includes fewer stories in general, but the ones he tells in greater detail. No surprise, then, that we should find in this Gospel longer stories about the resurrection. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, April 17th, 2023. I've never conducted an informal, let alone a formal survey of the stories people remember about the resurrection, but I would be willing to bet hard money that the stories in the Gospel of John would top the list. More people would probably remember these stories than the ones found in the other 3 Gospels, with the possible exceptions of the Emmaus Road encounter in Luke and the Great Commission in Matthew. But John's stories are just so distinctive and filled with tangible details that they are easy to remember. In John's Gospel account, the first appearance Jesus makes is early on resurrection morning. This detail he shares in common with the Gospel of Mark. Unlike all the other Gospel writers who reported that a group of women went to the tomb, John records that Mary Magdalene went to the place alone. Probably a relatively inconsequential detail, but worth noting. But like Mark, John reports that Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene alone in the garden outside the tomb. But where Mark simply notes it, John tells a story, and the details of the story make it stick out in our minds. Here's the setup. Mary Magdalene has come to the tomb early in the morning, only to find that the stone sealing the tomb has been rolled away. She immediately runs back to where Peter and the enigmatically named disciple whom Jesus loved to report what she has found. She tells them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." As you can see, she's made a jump in logic, but one we also probably would have made. The stone is rolled away, and the tomb empty. Reasoning backward from effect to cause, she deduces that someone has come and has taken his body. A logical deduction and a potential tragedy for all of them. John then reports that Peter and the other disciple run to the tomb and confirm what Mary Magdalene has reported. They also find the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. But Peter does something Mary Magdalene apparently didn't do at first. He bends down and looks into the tomb and finds the linen that had wrapped up Jesus' body just lying there, and the shroud that had covered his head rolled up neatly and sitting apart from the linen wrap. Peter and the other disciple then return to where they are staying, still not understanding what it is they've seen. Honestly, it was a lot to take in and to process. No doubt they came to the same conclusion as Mary Magdalene, that Jesus' body had been taken away by some unknown people. When they leave Mary Magdalene alone by the empty tomb. Now comes the encounter with Jesus. Here's John's account of that encounter. "But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping?' She said to them, 'They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him.' When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?' Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, 'Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away.' Jesus said to her, 'Mary.' She turned and said to him in Hebrew, 'Rabboni,' which means "Teacher." Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. John tells this story so well that we can see it in our mind's eye, and we can either put ourselves in Mary Magdalene's own sandals, or at least we can see the scene as if we had been there with her. First, she looks back into the tomb, only now it's not empty. Now 2 angels are in the place, and they ask her why she's weeping. She tells them exactly what she told Peter and the other disciple, that she believes someone has taken away Jesus' body. What is surprising here is that unlike just about every other encounter with angels we read about in the Bible, Mary shows no fear, only her sorrow about Jesus' apparent abduction. And surprisingly, the angels say nothing in return. Instead, Mary Magdalene turns around and sees someone else whom she assumes to be the gardener. She asks him if he knows where Jesus' body has been taken. Then he speaks. He asks her, just as the angels had, why she's weeping and who she's looking for. And she tells him the same thing and asks if he knows where they've laid the body. And then he says, "Mary." "Rabboni," she replies. It's not until he calls her by name that the truth breaks the gloom of the early morning and the fog of her own mood. Why did she not recognize him by sight or even when he first spoke? No telling. But it is his voice she recognizes, and not just his voice, her name in his voice. Not only would a gardener not know her by name, it signifies to us that his calling her by name is the thing that finally breaks through the fog of uncertainty. And isn't that the way it sometimes is? Sometimes it's not until we hear Jesus call us by name that the truth of the resurrection finally breaks through. When we return tomorrow, there are a couple more details of this encounter I still want to touch on. Until then, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.